Folks, welcome to Citizen Watch here on this beautiful Saturday morning. First weekend in August 2nd.
You moving back and forth?
Tell you, we only got a third of the year left. And it's just amazing how fast this year has gone, how many things have happened in my life this year. And in the city and the county, which we cover here on Citizen Watch, here in Studio C on KYOS.
Oops, sorry about that.
AM 1480. Trying to be professional, folks, but sometimes it's difficult.
I'm twiddling with a
Here
Sharpie.
in Studio C, we got Robert, the Geese Master, Tomasetti.
Hey, nope.
Nice article in the Merced County Times this week, folks. July 29th paper.
July 31st.
July 31st, excuse me. What?
Let me help you.
July 29th, week of July 29th. July 31st article of the Merced County Times, as I get back on mic. Talking about Robert's geese there on the corner of 21st and J and the attention they've got of local drivers. So
They're slowing down, and you know what, Case? I
What?
walked them. This is funny. I was pulling up to my house, and she was out there taking pictures. John Whitaker sent her over to take pictures, and she was asking me about the geese. And two things that I said that she didn't put in there is one, in our area we have those water beetles that come up, and
Right.
the geese just love that. So I take them out at night. But what I have a propensity to do is walk them catty corner
yes.
to make traffic stop.
Yeah, you have a problem with people running your stop sign there. I've seen it many times. It's absolutely amazing. If you're a pedestrian over there, be careful. So
You thought I was kidding, didn't you?
No.
And you come over to my house and sit down, and he looks at
It's
me.
funny how the geese make people stop, though. Everybody notices them. They actually stop at the stop sign because they're looking at the geese. So maybe Robert's doing a community service over there. But really nice article. Anyway, just wanted to...
And happy birthday. How was your birthday?
my birthday was great. That was
A week ago.
and we celebrated that. And I don't feel older, but I definitely look older. A lot more gray hair coming out. I would like to encourage people, if you miss any of our shows, go to YouTube. You can go to the search bar there on YouTube. Listen to any of our old shows. Just put in KYOS space 1480 AM in the search bar.
You know what?
Of course, you can hear us Saturday morning, 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. That's our new time.
You know what?
You what?
You have pretty good you have a pretty good radio voice. You know, our engineers making us wear these. I have a propensity to move around in the studio, and people can't hear me very well, and so he's got us with headphones. And Casey, man, can you do some Barry White?
Yeah, well, maybe later, but I am Casey Steed. I don't think I gave my name out, so people probably recognize me here from Citizen Watch. Lots been happening in the news, folks.
Oh, my gosh.
I don't know if we're going to be able. I don't know if we're going to be able to cover everything, but I'm going to try. One of the things we talked about last week was, or maybe it was week before, was the firm build incident over there with the Merced County Office of Education out at Castle. They had some asbestos issues, and there was going to be a sentencing of one of the principals, Rudy Buendia III. And when it came time for sentencing, the district attorney rescinded their plea agreement and talked about maybe taking this to trial. Well, they had some negotiations with the attorneys, and they went ahead with the original plea agreement. So it's good to see that case being put behind us, at least the legal aspect of it with the principals. And
I know the other half still bugs you.
Well, I know that Mr. Buendia's attorney said that his client was wanting to be a man enough, stand up, and take responsibility for his actions, which kind of disagreed with his public position about his innocence. So I'm glad to see that Mr. Buendia did step up. People need to realize that this asbestos issue was brought up because of a misappropriation of funds that was separate from the asbestos issue. And so there was a lot of hanky-panky going on there. People that say Mr. Buendia was unjustly singled out, I think need to look at the whole case. So I'm glad to see that this has kind of come to a conclusion.
Yeah, but the baddest guy in the whole group got away scot-free.
Well, we've talked about that. The Merced County Office of Education superintendent at the time was a gentleman named Mr. Lee Anderson, and he failed to report the violation as he was required to as a primary reporter, responsible party. And he didn't, and he was the one that Robert talked about that got away, and it's going to cost us millions of dollars over the next few years
and do me a favor.
to monitor.
Yeah, I was going to ask you
the kids.
Why the $1 million?
50 years. Well, you see, I was the other day on the TV. You saw the mesothelioma advertisement, for the
Every
lawsuits
night.
and the lawyers. Yeah, every night, every 5 minutes. If you have asbestos exposure, you get a spot on your lung. And of course, at the sentencing of Mr. Buendia this last week, one of the kids, who's now an adult family man, 2 or 3 kids, he goes, I live in fear every day that I won't get to see my kids grow up to be 18, to see them graduate high school. We were exposed, we were used, we were taken advantage of. They knew what they were doing, and yet they put us in that position. And I can tell you that that's just one of 60-some people that were exposed in this situation. And if any one of those gets a little black spot on the x-ray or a cough or blood in the lung, we're going to be paying for it.
I have a problem with that, though.
You have a problem with what, Robert?
I have a problem with people grandstanding at situations like that.
Well, it was the sentencing, and I think he was trying to bring up the severity.
Yeah, but the problem, the problem that I have with it, is they were put at risk.
Mm-hmm.
When they were being put at risk, these kids had no consciousness as to what was going on. They had no thought. Now all of a sudden, you get coached by some attorneys. We want you to come down, and we would like you to speak.
Well,
and they get in the.
when you say they didn't know, they didn't know. And they were brought into a situation where people were supposed to be supervising them who did know. And they did know the exposure they were giving those kids. And I think they put them in a position.
Oh, I disagree. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
And maybe
there.
once they found out, hey, what did you do to me? Man, I could have been killed.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
at the
that's what I'm
time,
talking
they
about.
didn't realize that. But
It's
anyway.
always after. What I mean is it's a pattern with people after the fact. They're like,
Well, and especially when money's involved. And there's the potential of some great
Some
liability. Great liability for the county. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens.
why don't they take it out of Lee's pocketbook?
Well, that's a whole other story. Anyway, Art Hop was last weekend.
How'd that go?
It was packed. I went down
Really?
downtown Saturday night. I don't know why I
You
was
were
down
looking for
there.
hotties, weren't you?
No, just happened to be driving home that way. And
How do you drive home that
Why
way?
are all the
I
people?
know where you live, and I know
I think
your
we
route.
were at the Itlo. There was an incident. Weren't there a party there Saturday? Anyway, I went downtown to get something or was doing anything.
Check
a lot
out
of
girls.
people. Art Hop, a great success for Merced. I think it was
Kevin does a good job with that.
Yeah, I couldn't remember the gentleman's name.
Kevin.
And his wife, right? She participates. too.
She participates. I believe she's an artist.
Yes.
And he manages Binary Systems,
Right.
which is on the corner of M and Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
And he was very instrumental in it. And I know that what had happened was there was a waning in it
Yes.
because there was some conflict as to him being promoting or allowed to promote his art hop as opposed to other situations that were going down. What I understand is that Kevin wanted to bring the art hop downtown, make it a fantastic situation, and he got distracted by the county or the city got distracted
city.
by John Cardenas and other people that want to do other things and undermine Kevin's art hop. And Kevin, I guess it's been put back on the track. And it was really good.
That was my question, is whether or not he ever got support from the city, because based on the attendance, if they're not supporting it, they need to support it.
You know what he said?
What?
He told me, and I'd love to have him in here, and he's asked me to ask Frank Quintero, our buddy. He said that John Bramble told him that there was some money that was not going to be distributed to Art Hop because John Bramble didn't see the value in it.
I heard that.
John Bramble is 63 years old. John Bramble, from what I understand, lives in Manteca. So I think it's a 2-hour ride home. So I don't think he wants to be out at 10 o'clock at night watching Art Hop because it's a long drive. Why a gentleman who runs our city lives 2 counties away, it's kind of interesting to me.
Well, where he came from is interesting. Bell, California. They were in the news this weekend. Their city mayor was just sent to prison for a year. Interesting, he didn't speak or write English, and yet he approved all of the city managers.
Was he like Sammy Sosa?
I don't know, but very interesting what happened there in Bell after Mr. Bramble left. Not to infer that he was part of any of those shenanigans, but I can tell you that Bell, California was a interesting example of complete corruption gone awry, people, the fox watching the henhouse, so to speak. But you mentioned Mr. Bramble and the city council meeting. There's been a lot of talk about the campus parkway. We've had Michael Bowomany in here many times.
You're getting his name right.
I know. Well, after 50 times, you get it right. But
Bowomany.
Bowomany. Anyway, Mr. Bowomany has been a big advocate, as has some of the other council members, about getting the campus parkway project up and running, getting that interchange fully developed, the campus parkway on its way to UC Merced and then on around to Castle and back up to Highway 99 through the Atwater Merced Expressway. That would be the ultimate goal. So one of the concerns was one of the big property owners, and Robert knows this gentleman, Bill Lyons Jr.,
Mapes Ranch in Modesto.
And they're evidently...
He's the one... Let me give you a little background.
Go ahead.
He was the gentleman that, when Atwater was losing Castle Air Force Base, Gary Condit took his eye off the ball, never supported Castle, let it die on the vine because his big thing was UC Merced. And somewhere along the line, he gave Mr. Lyons information as to where the parkway would go, and Mr. Lyons bought at the time I thought it was 800 acres. The report says 6, but he owns 800 acres along Campus Parkway.
Right, nice location.
And they said, great location. And they told him that they were never going to let him develop it because they wanted it as a campus parkway. They wanted it to be mural, picturesque and parkway-ish. And guess what? That ain't happening, is it?
No, it's not. Well, nothing's happened. It was interesting because there's been some talk at the council meetings that, the landowner isn't willing to talk with the council landowners. But I just wanted to read a little bit from the article in the Merced County Times. It said the most surprising show was none other than Bill Lyons Jr. from Modesto, who traveled down to City Hall after hearing some comments made by Merced leaders a few weeks ago concerning the family's involvement in negotiations to develop industrial land near Campus Parkway. He went on to say, "My family and I were very surprised to be portrayed and represented as non-engaged property owners," Lyon told the council members on Monday night. Councilman Mike Buendia has been very vocal about using city funds as soon as possible to create an industrial-specific plan to ease the setup for new investors. And the article goes on to say, Mr. Lyons said, "I am here tonight to clear up any misunderstandings and confirm with you my family's ongoing commitment to the City of Merced and University Industrial Park. We have been and will continue to be committed to making good, sound business decisions that affect the property my family owns. We are available to meet with the City Council and staff to discuss the city's economic development strategy and explore ways to improve the marketability of University Industrial Park and bring economic growth and jobs to the community." And with that, he left. So all of this talk we've heard about, he's not willing to work with us, blah, blah.
But wait, Case. There's a lot of times when I'll say something on the radio and you get blamed for it, and you say something and I get blamed for it.
Okay.
When our leaders are not specific and they're vague in their portrayal of owners, that includes Mr. Lyons Jr.
Right.
Okay. Maybe they weren't talking about him. Maybe they were talking about but we don't know. Because I don't remember Mapes Ranch or Bill Lyons Jr.'s name being brought up. Living in Modesto, as I had for 10 years before I moved back to Merced, Mr. Lyons did buy several strip malls, several of the strip malls, and he totally redid them, changed them, architectural designs, made it better looking. One of them you can see it is when you're coming off of Stanford Avenue. It's where Washington Mutual or what's the bank now called?
I don't know.
Chase. I think it's right there, but it's beautiful, and I think he's upset. And I think maybe when we talk about people, we should be more specific and not do the general all.
Well, I'm not saying he's the only landowner in the area, but he is one of them. And he did develop, I believe, the Walmart property, it says in the article, that they were going to use. So there is some industrial concern he's been involved with. And the other landowners should be brought into the process, too. And hopefully they're as willing as Mr. Lyons is.
But what is it
to participate? But what we've heard from the city is we don't. These people are resistant.
Do me a favor, Mike Belwomany and them. They said that the reason we lose businesses to places like Patterson because they have shovel ready and they're ready to go and they've got
and that's what he wants to do.
Right, but how many acres or how many? Doesn't it say in there? I'm doing this from memory. Many square feet of warehouse space?
Well, he's developed almost 500,000 square feet of warehouse space,
which
and
is
600
huge.
acres of industrial land within the University Industrial Complex, as well as other properties, as you've talked about the Central Valley. But I guess what I'm pointing out is that this guy heard that he's being portrayed as not willing to work with the city, being an obstructionist, and he's anything but. And so Diaz, and he wrote this letter to Mr. Diaz, our city attorney, and to Mr. Bramble. So I would encourage them to maybe take Mr. Buendia's lead, take the lead from Mr. Mays, and sit down and talk about, or Mr. Lyons, excuse me, and talk about.
Do people know where Mapes Ranch is?
I remember it being off of 99.
You go Highway 99, you go Highway 132. You pass Gallows property on the right, come over the river, and there is Mapes Ranch, and it is huge. Okay, this gentleman bought the 800 or the 600, whatever, how many acres he has in Industrial Parkway to develop it. He didn't sit there so that he can graze cattle from the Modesto.
No.
So this gentleman is very integral in getting this property that we talked about off and running.
All right. Well, folks, we're coming to the end of our first segment, our first break. We encourage you to stick with us through the break and listen to more Citizen Watch with Robert Tomasetti, Casey Steed. We have a guest sitting in, or talk about him when we get back. We'll be back in 2 shakes of a lamb's tail, folks. Stand by. Folks, welcome back to the second segment of Citizen Watch here on KYOS AM 1480, Voice of the Valley, the power of local radio. I'm Casey Steed. And sitting next to me is Robert.
The co-host, wait, I sent a message to Mr. Scambray, so this is how I signed it.
How did you sign it?
The co-host of that 2-bit radio show.
Robert, the Velvet Sledgehammer, Tomasetti, the Geese Whisperer. Encourage everybody to read the Merced County Times back page of the front section. You'll see his feet. And I'm not talking about the webbed ones.
The geese.
You know, it's funny, Robert's girlfriend was going to go on an episode of Naked and Afraid. Since it's so much of being like Robert with Robert. That was a joke.
What?
Nothing.
I didn't get it. What was that?
I think our engineer got it. Hey, listen, folks.
Hey, you're not supposed to talk about him.
We wanted to give a shout out to Roberta Flanagan.
90th birthday.
Celebrated
She
her.
looks so good.
She does. Great family over there on G and 21st. The Flanagans, Roberta, her daughter, Kay.
She has a daughter, Kay, and I think Peggy.
Peggy.
Well,
Good
they're
for you,
Irish
Peggy.
girls. Did you ever go to Red Top?
They love horses. Yeah.
You go to Red Top and you go to that Mexican restaurant, and Kay's grandfather, which would be Roberta's dad, I believe, caught these fish.
Yes.
So my brother says, where you want to go to lunch? I go, man, there's this like 80-pound tuna. Where? So I tell him, he
Red
goes,
Top.
bull poopies.
Yeah.
So I said, come on. So we went to Red Top for lunch one day just to see the fish hanging on the wall.
You reminded me of that. There's a cotton gin right next to that. A lot of people, a lot of local farmers eat at that restaurant. The way I used to go to Coalinga, the back way, through the roads there, Red Top. Interesting little place, little airport out there.
What?
Anyway, Roberta, happy birthday. Happy 90th birthday.
I want to give a shout out.
Who?
I met this really nice person, okay, from Merced, moved back to Merced, going to be a pharmacist. Her father owns San Joaquin Drug in Planada.
Planada.
And while I was there, I met a very nice I'm meeting nice people from Planada. And the reason I say this is because we make fun of Planada sometimes. In our descriptions of what's going on with gangs and those killings. And the young lady, I forgot her name, but she is the postmaster out there.
Oh, really?
Very nice. Yeah, they were very nice people. And I feel bad when we say things about places, and then you meet these wonderful people. And the young lady's name, I believe, is Katie Bass, and her dad, John Bass, I believe is his name, and he owns San Joaquin Drug out in Planada. And there's a second-generation business thriving. Sent his daughter to University of Hawaii, and she's getting her pharmacy degree.
Wow. Well, it's nice to see people come back to the Valley.
She was attractive, too.
Yes. Well, I don't know what to say. That's great. You know, in Planada, that's a tough road to hoe out there, but they need people out there. And
they're doing a lot of different stuff I've been noticing.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's like we talk about with the school kids, you know, staying here in the area and just not getting an education and leaving, you know, it's what we need, you know, and I saw some articles about people coming back, quitting their business to run the family farm, because we're an agriculture area, folks, and we don't want to lose these family farms. And so it's good to see people coming back, participating, and it's, to be quite honest with you, it's very lucrative nowadays. Nut crops, agriculture, irrigated farmland, still very valuable. So I think coming back to our roots.
Look at Greg Hostetler, who was one of the big movers and shakers with Ranchwood Homes. And now he's a what?
Biggest almond farmer.
One of the biggest almond farmers in the state.
One of the biggest, yes. Many, many acres. So he saw the handwriting on the wall, if you will. You don't see him ripping those trees out and putting in homes. Folks, one of the things we wanted to talk about here that happened locally in the news, and we're just going to bring up and just talk about what we know, is the arrest of Ethan Morris, which is the son of District Attorney Larry Morse, who we've had on these airways many, many times. I consider him a friend of the show.
Many more times.
He's been very, very candid. He's been very, very honest. We've talked about the specific incident in which his son is implicated in, and all we can say is what we've seen in the paper. and you're innocent until proven guilty.
But you know what I like?
There should be no aspersions as to his guilt or involvement until all the facts come out.
That's true. But you know what I like?
All we have seen is things from preliminary hearings, innuendo. There's been a lot of comments. There's been a lot of speculation, but that's all it is.
But,
and I would encourage people not to jump to conclusions until facts are made public.
But
go ahead. I'm sorry.
no, that's okay, because Larry's a friend of ours. But here's the other thing. Two things is everybody who's in the newspaper that has these kind of situations should be it should be warranted, and they are innocent until proven guilty.
Exactly.
Not just Ethan, because Larry's a friend of ours, but everybody. When you read about any of this stuff, it should always be ferreted out as to whether or not it's true or false. And the other thing is I think the way the district attorney is handling this is very classy. Larry's backed himself out of it, backed his office out of it when he found his son was involved, because they don't want, if no matter what happens, they don't want any backlash as, it was the district attorney's son, like
right.
what happened to poor Dylan. Dylan got a lowering of a sentence, and everybody said, it's because who his mom and dad were. And I think Larry and Cindy are handling this very tactfully.
I might take a little bit exception to the term poor Dylan. I think he got himself into that situation.
Well, I don't mean poor Dylan, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. And I think a lot of people are basing their judgments in this situation based on that incident. I think that's unfair. I think, again, one doesn't get in with the other. Anyway, I'm just wanting to talk about it because I know it's a really hot news story here in the Valley. We report on issues in our community, and we would be not doing a job as Citizen Watch not to talk about it. But I want to encourage people to wait until the facts are out. And as those facts come out, we will report them.
But here's the problem. Because I'm going to do a sidebar here because I know what you want to talk about, and I'm going to do something here. Okay. But that's like with the district attorney, but the public defender's office. Wait till the facts come out.
What did we see in the news about that?
What happened is we waited. We saw the facts come out. And when we were shown the facts, now the young lady who's involved wants to sue the county for letting those facts out. Now, we can go on Mrs. Souders or Miss Souders, Deidre's daughter, and we can surmise because the public defender had some...
What Robert's talking about is there was an incident a few months ago where our old public defenders, Mr. Dumars, resigned from office.
I was trying to be very tactful how I did this.
Yeah, well, just to bring people up to date because some people may not know what goes on.
He tried to commit suicide and all kinds of other stuff.
Had some really big personal issues and decided he couldn't go on as the public defender, so they dismissed him. There was a public report that the paper asked for that came out, and it implicated Mrs. Kelsey's daughter, Supervisor Kelsey's daughter, as being involved in some hijinks over there in the public defender's office.
Now, here's the point. Wait. This is what I'm getting at. Now, there were hijinks at the public defender's office.
Right.
There was a lot of innuendo.
Yes.
There was a lot of rumor.
Right.
The gentleman wanted to commit suicide.
Right.
He was found hanging by his wife.
Right.
Very traumatic situation. What caused it? People say, well, it was the hijinks at the office. So what we did was the paper did due diligence. They got the information. The county got the information. Now the young lady wants to sue the county for $200,000 because she says that the information about the hijinks embarrassed her.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you shouldn't have had the hijinks, lady.
That's right. And wants a public apology printed in the paper. And again, I think the county is going to say...
You know what I think?
Going to say no. I find it interesting that $200,000 is the amount that the supervisors get every
year. I know you think that's
funny. In their discretionary funds. They get $40,000 a piece per supervisor times 5 is $200,000.
But here's my question.
Maybe this year the boys ought to just give it all to Ellie's daughter, or to Deidre's daughter.
But here's the question. Okay, this is a Maldiv situation. This is where we have weak city and county attorneys. Right. County attorneys should look at it and say dismissed, but I'm going to tell you what will probably happen. The attorney will go for the county. Well, if we do this, and this, it's cheaper to just give her $50,000 and let her go away.
When's Mr. Dumar is going to present his lawsuit to the county? Like I say, these things never end, and this is part of the problem with nepotism. This is part of the problem with hiring, because we read in the report where she talked about being. It was funny the term they used.
Somebody called her Mrs. Public Defender.
Mrs. Public Defender. Well, there already was a Mrs. Public Defender, and she wasn't too happy about being second in line.
Not when she went to go out and get her car and found her husband hanging from the rafters.
Yeah, I don't know what the
That's got to be very scary.
It's a very, very traumatic thing, and
but somebody wants $200,000 because they got themselves in a bad situation.
Right, and it was made public. And like you say, don't do the action in the first place. We won't have an issue.
There you go.
So anyway, I hope.
Sorry for the sidebar.
No. Well, I wanted to talk about it. Matter of fact, I didn't have it on the list, and I knew about it last week.
I just think it's another Maldiv situation. Put a gun to Jim Fincher's head, and Jim's going to cave in because all the attorneys do, because they're what? Risk adverse.
Right.
So let's just pay her off and let her go away, because we can't go to court. Jim, aren't you an attorney? Are you a good attorney? Then go kick her butt.
Yeah.
Go play attorney like you're supposed to.
Well, she's trying to say that he didn't redact certain information in the report that he should have, and he said, no, we had to release this information. Otherwise, the Sun Star would have sued us, who asked for the information in the first place. So you're in a darned if you do, darned if you don't position. I think in this case, the county council handled it correctly, and I hope they continue to handle it correctly by denying this claim.
It's going to be on the agenda.
Of course, and Mrs. Kelsey...
What's she going to do?
She's going to have to recuse herself, of course, and it's going to give a 4... To pay this kind of money, you have to have a 4-0 vote or a 4-5 vote. Supermajority. It ain't going to happen. I hope that Supervisor Pedroso, Supervisor Walsh, Supervisor O'Banion, Supervisor Davis, Lame Duck Davis, hope that they stay...
Lim Duck.
Hope that they stay firm in their resolve and reject this claim. Don't even pay a percentage of it. Stand firm, because what this does is this sends a chilling effect where we can't have openness in government. And we always talk about transparency.
Yep.
We talk about openness. Here you've done it. Don't be bullied by a supervisor's daughter, or a supervisor for that matter, because I understand she was a little upset that this all came out. Anyway, talking about supervisors, the Fresno County supervisors showed leadership, folks.
That
this
was good.
week. They came out
3-2.
3-2, pooling their support of high-speed rail, California high-speed rail. They joined other counties up and down the valley, Kings.
Did you read that?
Madera, but unfortunately not Merced.
I was going to say that. I said if you read it, Merced was glaringly empty.
It was glaringly empty. In the first version of the draft, they had Merced. I knew it was a mistake. So folks didn't read the article or read that particular version of the Sun Star story, realized it was wrong. Merced still supports high-speed rail. They're still in this fantasy that it's going to come. And
it would be interesting.
There was a court ruling this week that lends some credence to that. There's some bonds that are able to be sold now, but still not out of the woods.
What court is it?
It's the
Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals.
Right.
The one that all the liberals get whatever they want.
Well, they're appointed by Governor Brown. So
and he wants what?
He wants HSR. We call it the Brown Streak. It's not a surprise that the Court of Appeals overturned Judge Kenney's decision, but it was just one of many decisions, one of many lawsuits facing HSR. And so I don't think this is over by a long shot. But what I wanted to talk about, the Fresno County supervisors did debate this issue. They took all kinds of testimony. There was many people, more people against than for. And when the final vote came down, the losing side, the supporters of HSR, accused the...
Wasn't that cute? That's what I meant. Wasn't that silly?
They said, oh, you guys made a deal.
In their break.
And during the break and some collusion. And if anything, I find it funny how the people that accuse people of collusion are usually the ones that collude themselves. And I think there's been a lot of sweetheart deals on HSR, union support, project labor agreements, things like this, sole source suppliers. So if there's been any collusion, my friends, it's not about the people that oppose HSR. It's about those that want to literally railroad this thing to completion. So it was good.
I don't think they use, and you're right, Case, and this is always bugs me, is they came to they used common sense and said, hey, wait a minute, you're tearing down buildings. You're taking over neighborhoods. That's tax base that you're just getting rid of. And instead of the HSR people going, well, let's move it to where we can go straight down Highway 5, like everybody says, hey, you want a train, put it on Highway 5. No.
Right.
We want, look at Merced. Look how many businesses will be displaced.
Yeah, I find it funny over there on J Street and 16th, they're building this new commercial building over at the old Cross Lumber, Yosemite Builders, whatever they called it years ago. And you would say, why are they building that? HSR is going to destroy that in a few years. Well, guess what? If you own that land and they come to you and say, we're going to, eminent domain, it's worth a lot more as a thriving business than a piece of warehouse or a piece of parking lot. So
there's some hanky-panky going on.
Right. Realize that people's money is the root of all evil, my friends. And not to say that money is evil, it's just the root of it. So you have to look at people's motivations, and I think it's interesting to see this HSR. But what I wanted to bring this back to is our own Littleburg here of Merced County in the supervisor's race in District 3. We have Mr. Tomasetti and Mr. McDaniel. And Mr. McDaniel has come out in opposition of HSR, as the Fresno County supervisors have. And it's nice to know that somebody has a position. Now, Mr. Tomasetti is still
waiting until he gets closer to the election.
Yeah, I don't really understand that. I mean, the people that say this brings jobs, well, folks, you can take your house apart and stay warm in the winter for wood, burn your own home, but you're not going to have a house at the end of the winter. And so to use these tax dollars and say, hey, it makes sense, I think, is wrong. So I hope the supervisors take a stand, the two candidates in that race. Folks, we're coming to the end of our second break. I ask you to stay with us through to the third break on Citizen Watch here on KYOS AM 1480. Folks, welcome back to Citizen Watch, our third and final segment here on Saturday, August 1st, the first Saturday in August. We encourage you to listen to our third and final segment and stay with KYOS for the fantastic programming we have coming on after us here on Saturday morning. We have Tea Party Straight Talk after us. After that, we have something that comes on at 9 o'clock. I kind of forget now. We're changing up a little bit, but we encourage you to listen to that 6 to 10 o'clock block. And if you missed something this morning, tune in tonight from 6 to 10 o'clock, and you can rehear our programming on KYOS. Before we went to the break, we were talking about the Fresno County supervisors and hoping that the Merced County supervisors and some of the candidates can show some leadership when it comes to high-speed rail and other issues. We talked about the discretionary fund. We talk about layoffs, privatization.
You know what I think?
So many things that are coming up in this race.
Now listen to the race.
Go ahead.
You and I have listened to this race.
Mm-hmm.
And you bring up some very good specific situations of Atwater.
All right.
Have you heard either candidate talk about any of that stuff?
Not really, just in platitudes. And you bring up a good point. The Atwater race has now been solidified it's not completely solidified. I think the filing period's still open, but Mr. Wallace, who used to own a trucking company, is in the race. Of course, Ms. Fall, the incumbent, and Mr. Jim Price.
Are you sure that's Mr. Wallace from the trucking company?
I'm pretty sure.
I thought it was Obie Wallace. And I saw William Wallace, I thought, or something like that. I'll look into that, but I don't think it's the same.
I could be wrong, but his purpose, Mr. Wallace's purpose of getting into the race, he said was to hopefully get other people into the race, which Mr. Price came into the race. So hopefully he's going to be a participant. I know Mr. Price is going to be a participant.
Do you know what it does, though?
Mrs. Fall has said she wants to continue the direction that Atwater's headed in, which...
That's disaster.
Well... It's going to be interesting. It's going to be an interesting race. But Robert brings up a good point that we want to hear specifics. We want to hear what you're going to do about things. And I think some of these candidates are in a better position to do that than others. So, one other little thing that we saw in the
Wait. Go back, Case.
To the Atwater race?
Yeah. Okay. Here's the thing with Atwater. How many years has Atwater been Atwater? Now I had an office there where Wendy's is.
Right.
It was the old Ted Brodolski building.
Right.
Ted introduced me to the Cardozas and Olzaks and that, and they all did what? They kept a tight rein on Atwater, and you never knew what was going on until last minute. Okay. Now the problem that I have with the way it's going is you got the Rivero boys. Now, Mr. Rivero, the son, ran because his dad and he have the same name. He used his father. All he did was regurgitated his father's signs, and Joe Rivero, and everybody went, yeah. And the point with Joan Fall is that she's been running unopposed for how many years?
12 years. Well, the last time she ran unopposed, she's been in the saddle 12 years over there, and I think it's a good discussion. Again, we want to foment public discourse, a discussion, talk about the issues, not just say, hey, wait till I get in and I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
Well, you know who does that? I'm going to hate to say this because he's a friend of mine, but Tony Tomasetti has said nothing about anything.
Right.
Okay. Yes, he's been at places, and I told him, I said, Tony, it's going to be a tough road because you're in that sliver of Merced.
Right.
You got to be from Atwater, and he's gone to a lot of Atwater programs and functions. But I haven't heard Tony say any rhetoric about what he's going to do and what his options and his proposals are.
Right.
Now, as a city councilman, he's been very vocal and he's been very good
That's right.
about saying, hey, this is what I want to do.
That's right.
I just hope that it transcends in his race, because if I'm going to vote, which I can't, but if I could, I want to know what Tony's going to do.
Well, agreed, and for that matter, Mr. McDaniel, and he's been a little more specific on some issues about the discretionary fund, HSR, what should be done at Castle.
But let me ask you this.
Yes.
Isn't that the devil's advocate too? Mm-hmm. And what I mean is, we know that you and I have railed on the in other words, are people is Darren pandering with his rhetoric, because people want to know what you're going to do with the $40,000.
Yeah.
What are you going to do at Castle?
Right.
And so he tells you what you want to hear, and you go, "Oh, well, I like that guy." You know, what I want to know is, I would like to hear a debate, or have them both sit there and say, "This is what I want to do. This is why it's all wet."
Right. Well, it is a specific. You know, one of our leaders here in town that's already went through an election and was successful and won't be coming up on the November ballot is Mr. Dr. Stephen Gomes, Dr. Sominex, as we like to call
He
him.
offered me lunch.
Take it.
I like that guy.
I do too. We've had him on the show several times.
No, I want to tell you what he did when you talk about your project. Huh? He had me in his office and sat down with me and explained this.
And you can probably enlighten me more. I wanted to talk about Adam Cox's extremely critical.
Who is he?
Editorial. He's a board member on the Merced County Elementary School District over there. I think Susan Walsh, protege of Dr. Walsh. I know that she's defended him several times
For the children?
when he's come under criticism from others. But he was fairly critical of Dr. Gomes. And what Dr. Gomes is trying to do is a new STEM school: science, technology,
It's not
engineering.
trying. I think it's done, isn't it?
He got it done. Engineering and math. And I found it interesting. They had a bus parked over there on the corner of 22nd and R Street a couple of days ago, and it said, "Good pay plus holidays off equals a great job." And they were advertising for bus drivers. Well, that was a mathematical equation. And it's good to see that our school district is using mathematical equations, and Dr. Gomes recognizes the importance of that and wants to start a STEM school. Unfortunately, Mr. Cox, board member Cox, Adam Cox, doesn't share that view. He says Cox has no problem with the STEM program, but he feels Gomes should be spending his time helping the individual school districts meet the needs of students and not setting up an alternate school system, which will actually take students away from established campuses in the district. And school districts in Merced County cannot afford to lose students, he said. They have been forced to cut staff in the past years when there was not enough funds to operate. At the same time, we did not see the county school office having to cut staffing. So this is some sort of
Okay, stop.
rope contest, you know.
Okay, stop a minute there.
Yeah.
Okay, read what you said. First of all, I didn't think that Steve Gomes, the MCOE superintendent, I thought he was one of 22 superintendents who all have the same powers, except that the MCOE does the budgeting and the payroll, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
So where does Mr. Cox get off saying that Mr. Gomes should be spending his time helping the individual school districts? I'm sorry, Adam, but you have a school superintendent called Rosemarie Parga Duran.
That's right.
With her Muppet Ken Testa that wants to run around town getting $60 million for buildings that are not leaking and there are not problems, and yet they aren't looking at a STEM program. They're looking how to increase pay.
Right. Yeah.
We haven't had a pay raise in 6 years. It's for the children.
We've given Mr. Gomes kudos on this show for looking out for the kids and the community. We've heard that people are taking their kids out of this community, going to private schools for STEM education because the public schools don't offer it. We had the Challenger Learning Center closed. Yes.
Right. Go back to your point to make your points. To make Casey's points, if people get a chance to read the July 31st issue, there was a child by the name of Christopher Roque that wrote a letter to the editor that we read on here about how he went out and he tried to get teachers. Okay, he had to go to Modesto. Okay, he and his brother to apply for to go to a STEM school because he thinks science is cool.
Right.
We see on TV Chevron. We see on TV other organizations. I think IBM was one.
Google.
PG&E, where they talk about science. Steve Gomes sees the information. He says, you know what, Robert? When he had me in his office, he says, I want to make a plug from our STEM school to the UC. Sorry about that. Our STEM school to the UC.
Right.
And what he says is, it's integral. Here's Rosa Parga Duran and Mr. Vinny Scambray, who sits there and says, oh, wait a minute. He's taking butts out of our seats.
That's right.
So Stephen Gomes did a calculation. He said there are 16,000 students in Merced County. I want 200 students.
That's right.
That's 0.0125 of all the students. I want 100
Of 1%.
of 1%. I want to do that, and they're blocking me. I said, why? You know what he told me? Because they didn't think of it. Now, in these articles, they'll talk about how they're doing this and they're helping a little bit that and helping. No, we need STEM. You took away Castle's STEM.
Right.
I mean, if the people were paying attention, they would see that what Steve Gomes is trying to do is phenomenal.
Right.
Fantastic.
What-
He did it.
He did it.
He got the money. He got the approval. Okay, you got to pass to get anything accomplished with the other districts. Now, what Adam Cox said to me was this, that Steve Gomes is managing his school district better than you're managing yours. And I'm going to read it to you. School districts in Merced can't afford to lose students. They've been forced to cut staff in past years when there wasn't enough funds to operate. That's crappy budgeting. But at the same time, the county school's office did not have to cut staff.
Right.
So what you're telling me is that Steve Gomes is able to handle the money better, handle okay, I got so many people, so many kids, this is what I do. Then Rosemary Parga Duran, okay, then Scott Scambray, and any of the others that want to pop their head up and talk about how bad STEM is for Merced.
And it'd be nice to see them working with Mr. Gomes instead of against Mr. Gomes, writing editorials after the fact. Mr. Cox should have brought this issue up months ago.
And did you read what he said?
It just sounds like sour grapes.
It was a problem, but nobody brought it up. Well, why didn't you? You're the one that's leading with your face.
We've known that we haven't had a STEM program since the Challenger Learning Center closed. So,
And was there really a STEM program?
well,
like what Steve Gomes wants to do.
no, but it did have the elements of it, and I just think this goes to show what the what the union's single-minded goal is, and this is more money for more staff. And what we're concerned about is the education that we're giving our kids out there. We need to have these opportunities, these options, if you will. I've been a big fan of ROP. STEM isn't for everybody, folks. Some people are more inclined to the laborious trades, the physical trades. I know in other countries they test you at an 8th grade level and they decide if you're going to go the academic route or the professional trades route. And I think we lack that in our country. So I applaud Mr. Gomes at least giving one option of several that are lacking in this county. ROP being another one, and I know he's working on that.
But here's the problem.
Are they going to complain when
Yes.
Mr. Gomes comes with an ROP program
Absolutely.
and says, you know what, we're going to take those kids out, we're going to put them with local business leaders, we're going to try to give them skills so when they do get out of your school, they have a job, and are we going to hear from Mr. Cox, well, we want the money now. You're taking away our money. We don't care about the kids when they graduate. We just want the money. Is that what we're going to hear from Mr. Cox?
Well, yes, and here's why. If you read the article about STEM, there's two parts about it, and I know we're running out of time I wanted to get to. First one is this Christopher Roche wanted to go, and he had to go to Stanislaus County for the STEM. He contacted several teachers, and they never contacted him back. And it says here, there were some noted teachers from Merced Union High School District who did not share Christopher's excitement of getting the STEM program. It says, why should MCOE, excuse me, folks, make a major investment to duplicate what is already offered in Atwater, Livingston, and Merced? I don't know that Atwater, Livingston, and Merced is offering STEM.
Doesn't sound like Merced's offering it if Mr. Cox is upset.
Right. And then the other thing says, this Pamela Merritt Bennett, a biology teacher, says, I've always understood that the role of county schools is to be one of the supports for the component districts, not competition. Well, if he thinks it's important and goes to Rosa Parga Duran and goes to Scott Scambray and they think he's all wet, of course I'm going to go and open my own. It says the Merced Union High School District is on the forefront of Common Core implementation. We have a strong science program. If you have a strong science program, why aren't we graduating kids with science backgrounds to go to Google and to go to those schools? We are not. I don't care about your Common Core program. Common Core is all nuts. Oklahoma said see ya. Indiana said see ya. What, 6 states?
6 states said see ya. We've seen a lot of things coming out about Common Core lately, some of the questions. I don't know about that. We're still going to see the implementation, but you can't take away. I don't care if it's Common Core or the old way you taught kids. You still need STEM. So, again, we applaud Mr. Gomes. Mr. Cox, come on. Quit throwing rocks. Get on board.
Maybe he should be replaced from sitting on that school district. Because remember, the school districts are the ones that run the show.
There are. Folks, we're getting to as Robert said, we're getting to the end of our time with you here on this beautiful Saturday morning. I encourage you to stay with KYOS. Tea Party Straight Talk is next.
Why did you?
We have in studio Richard Randall Road Trip, a show that unfortunately is no longer on these airways, but he came down this morning.
If you have a copy of the CDs, sell them on eBay.
Yeah, they're going to be collector's items. But Richard, thanks for coming in.
Oh, it's always good to see you guys. I've missed you guys. And
We're going to lunch here in a few minutes.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to let you buy us lunch. I'm teasing you. One thing we wanted to go out with,
you picked that out. Why did you pick it out?
Well, because
he's a very good friend.
The Clendenin family, I was in 4-H and ag, and the Clendenins have always been in ag. My dad taught out at Merced College. Mr. Clendenin taught out at Merced College, and Mr. William.
Did he really?
Yes, Mr. William Clendenin
Passed
away
away last week.
July 25th, 2014. Again, our condolence goes out to the
I am,
Clendenin family. They're a big
Bill,
family,
Tom,
here in Merced.
and a sister who I don't even know, and Jimmy.
It's in there somewhere in the obituary, but again, we wanted to send our condolences and thoughts out to the family. As it said in the start of the obituary, a man with a very big heart.
Edna. That's the way.
Right. So,
and he was a big-hearted man, and he always wanted to be part of the Idolo, and he was there, and he was supportive, and Dan Clendenin, his son, is a member. Tommy's not. Jimmy, we would love to have you. And Karen is a fantastic people. They are very instrumental, folks, in the support of the Old Timers program here in Merced County.
Right.
God bless you, Clendenin family. We'll miss you, Bill.
Yeah. Again, well, folks, we've come to the end of the third and final segment of Citizen Watch on August 2nd, 2014. All my love goes out to Oklahoma, thinking of all you guys. And I know Robert and his geese are doing well.
No, my love is for Oklahoma, too.
Yeah. And what do we say every time we leave?
Good night, Mrs. Calabash. I'm in Oklahoma.
Bye, folks.